Welcome to this fourth session in understanding Hatha Pradeepika by Yogendra Swatmarama Suri. As we have seen in the last 4 sessions, including the introduction, Yogendra Swatmarama Suri unfolds the practical, philosophical, and various benefits, practices, methods of the asana, pranayama, kriyas, mudras, bandhas. And now in this particular 4th lesson, Chaturtha Upadesha, Yogendra talks mostly about the philosophical dimension and the various practices, methods, benefits, stages of the mind, consciousness, chitta, and the samadhi. Various names also have been given for the samadhi. Just like as we have seen in the earlier lesson, Vayu, Vata, Prana, like this Paryaya Padas have been given. Similarly, for samadhi also, Paryaya Vachakas have been mentioned in this particular 4th lesson. And let us see what is the general understanding, a bird's eye view of this Chaturthopadesha. The first shloka is an invocation to Shiva, the Adi Guru. The second shloka is a statement on samadhi. Third and fourth are the various synonyms of the samadhi. 5th to 9th shloka describes various definitions, descriptions of samadhi. 10 to 13 shlokas discusses about the sushumna, the mind, etc. 14 to 17 talks about the prana and the mind. So 10 to 13 is on sushumna and the mind. 14 to 17 is prana and the mind. And the 18 to 21 is on prana and sushumna. So this 10 to 21 are the shlokas which deal with sushumna, mind and prana and the relationships, the interrelationships. Then 20 to 44, of course, so very detailed discussions are there. 22nd to 28 is how to stabilize the mind, mana sthirata, and the stabilization with the help of the breath, that is pranayama. That is a discussion in the 22nd to 28th shloka. 29 to the 34 shlokas, they deal with the unique concept, a unique state of the mind, the laya sthiti of the Hatha Pradeepika. 35 to 39, these shlokas talk about the Shambhavi Mudra, very important dimension. 40 to 42 talks about the dhyana, the meditation. 43rd shloka to the 54th shloka discusses about the importance of Khichari. 55 to 63 are the descriptions, methodologies, means to Samadhi, methods, steps, ladder to Samadhi. 64 to 77 is the crux of this chapter, this particular lesson. From 64 to 77, you need detailed discussion about the Nada-anusandhanam. Nada, Shabda, sound, and Anusandhanam, its effect on the mind and the body. 78 to 102 gives various practices, effects, methods, benefits, and signs of the Nada. And then 103 to 114, the last set of shlokas talks about the Samadhi. And as we see in this particular lesson, Samadhi is referred or equated with a new word, Unmani. So 103 to 114 talks about the Unmani, the layers of the Samadhi, the detailed experiences, Samadhi Anubhava, Unmani Anubhava. It talks about it. So in this 114 shlokas of the Chaturthopadesha, the fourth lesson, Yogendra Satmara Masuri unfolds the highest points, the deep, subtle growths, experiences, developments, and the highest states of the mind, and ultimately the Unmani Sthiti, which is the Samadhi. So let us have a little brief browsing through the entire chapter, a quick glance. The first shloka is a very beautiful shloka as a prayer and an invocation. Namah Shivaya Gurave Nada Bindu Kalatmane Niranjana Padam Yati Nityam Yatra Parayanaha. Namah Shivaya Gurave Nada Bindu Kalatmane Niranjana Padam Yati Nityam Yatra Parayanaha. Namah Shivaya Gurave Nada Bindu Kalatmani. Shiva, the Guru, is of the nature of the Nada, Bindu and Kala. It is the Shodasha Kala Prapurana, the 16 characteristics which we talk about. And constantly Namaha Niranjana Padam. Niranjanaha is the state of absolute beyond darkness, beyond any shade and shadows. Yati Nityam Yatra Parayanaha, to that Guru who is established there. That is how Swatmarama Suri offers it. And from the shloka number second is also very important, where he talks about a statement about the Samadhi. Raja Yoga Samadhischa Unmanicha Manunmani Amarattam Layastam Shunya Shunyam Parampadam Amanaskam Tatha Dvaitam Niralambam Niranjanam Jivan Muktischa Sahaja Turiya Chetya Ekavachakaha. As the second, third and the fourth. And this third and fourth, these two shlokas gives the Pariyaya Vachakas, the different names. The Samadhi is mentioned, is referred. Raja Yoga Samadhischa, the Samadhi of the Raja Yoga is mentioned, referred as Unmani, Manunmani, Amaratvam, Layastattam, Shunya Ashunyam Param Padam, Amanaskam, Tatha advaitam niralambam niranjanam jivan muktischa sahaja turiya cha ekavachakaha. All these things refer to that samadhi of the Raja Yoga. Similarly, the fifth shloka is another beautiful one where the mind and the samadhi have been referred. Salile saindhavam yadvat samyam bhajati yogataha tathatma manasorekyam samadhirabi diyate. Just as a salt gets dissolved in water, the mind dissolves in Atman. And that is the state of the samadhi. How beautifully it is defined and described. Just like a salt gets dissolved, it loses its separateness from the water. And it loses its existence. It loses its individuality. It spreads, becomes one, occupies entire space of the water. And that disappearance of the salt into the water, the mind disappears in the Atman. That is beautifully the shloka has been described. Yada sankhiyate prano manasam cha praliyate tada samarasatvam cha samadhi radidhiyate. Again the definition of the samadhi. Another beautiful example has been given here, where the entire mental activity has been lost. Sankhiyate prano manasam cha praliyate. It's lost. Similarly, another dimension of this samadhi has been given in the next 7th shloka. Beautiful it is. Tat samam cha dayoraikyam jivatma paramatmanoho pranashta sarvasankalpaha samadhi sa abhidiyate. Samadhi cha abhidiyate. The 5th shloka ends with samadhir abhidiyate. The 6th shloka ends with samadhir abhidiyate. And the 7th one also concludes with samadhir abhidiyate. The definitions of samadhi from 3 different dimensions. That is how beautifully the shlokas goes. And we find beautifully in the 11th and the 12th shlokas, we find the description of the movement of the prana and the sushumna, the various relationships, dependence, and the interlinking, interdependence, interrelation between the prana and the sushumni. Utpanna shaktir bodhasya tyakta nishesha karmanaha yoginas sahajavastha sayameva prajayate. In yogis, the kundalini has been aroused and no longer performs any action. And that is the sahajavastaha. And beautifully, you see the shloka on the particular dimension, the 12th shloka, sushumna vahini prane shunye vishati manase tada sarvani karmani nirmulyati yogi yogavit. That means the prana moves through the sushumna and the manas merges into the vast expansive void. And the yogi no longer is bound by any karma. He is niralambaha, naishkarmyaha. The naishkarmya sthiti of the Advaita Vedanta of the Adi Shankaracharya is reflected and described here. It exactly reflects the same thing. And chitte samattamapanno vayo vrajati madhyame tada amaroli vajroli sahajoli prajayate. And once the amaroli, vajroli, sahajoli have been accomplished, the mind gets balanced. Chitte samatvam apno samatvata. The chitta becomes samatvam and Vayu enters into Sushumna. Vayu vrajati madhyame. Madhyame is Sushumna here. Ida and Pingala are on the both sides and the center is the Sushumna. Once the Amaroli, Vajroli, Sahajoli have been mastered, Prajayate, when then the mind becomes equilibrium, balanced, then what happens? Vayo, the prana, vrajati, moves in the madhyama, the Sushumna Nadi. Similarly, we have beautiful descriptions about the wonderful description we find in the 21st shloka. Pavano badhyate ena manastena eva badhyate manascha badhyate ena pavanastena badhyate. Whatever controls the prana controls the mind, and whatever controls mind controls prana. The relationship between the mind and the prana is well known in various yoga texts and yoga granthas and the practices of the yoga. When the mind becomes quiet, the prana movement becomes quiet. Slow movement of prana relaxes the mind, and the concentration of the mind is achieved by slow, deep, long, harmonious, synchronized breathing. Controlling the prana controls the mind. And the other way, when the mind is controlled, the breath speed also gets released. The different relationship, the well-known relationships has been re-emphasized in this particular shloka. Then we find the Shambhavi Mudra, description of Shambhavi Mudra we find in the 35 shloka. Veda Shastra Puranani Samanya Ganika Iva Ekaiva Shambhavi Mudra Gupta Kulavadhuriva. Vedas, Shastras, Puranas are all just like a normal woman. But Shambhavi Mudra is like a woman who is never exposed to the public. He gives a beautiful simile about the people roaming around, wandering, exposed everywhere, and people who are not exposed and established in oneself. He uses the word, of course, Kulavadhuriva as a Kulavadhuriva as a homely woman. How a homely woman, a household woman, confines herself to the home and exalts herself, and the others goes around and wandering. And similarly, Shambhavi Mudra is like that. The simile is given compared with the women because Shambhavi is a feminine portion of the woman, or feminine expression. Shambhava is the Shiva, the male portion. Shambhavi is the female attitude, female emotion, motherly emotions, feminine emotions. As we all know that in all human beings, in entire creation, we have this masculinity and the feminine, Shambhava and Shambhavi, Shiva and Shakti. The energy has two dimensions, the potential and the kinetic. Similarly, Shambhavi Mudra refers to the feminine nature. An entire creation is made out of it. And the 37th shloka gives the exact definitions and the practice. Antarlaksha Vilina Chitta Pavano Yogi Yada Vartate Drishtya Nishchalataraya Bahiradha Pashyan api mudreyam khalu shambhavi bhavati sa labdha prasadad guroho shunya ashunya vilakshanam spurati tattvam param shambhavam. How beautifully it gives. When the yogi is in a state in which both chitta and the prana have lost themselves in Antarlaksha, it is called. The chitta goes into its root. Prana goes into its root. And the gaze is directed outwards. And that is called as the Shambhavi Mudra. It is nothing to do with where we keep our hands, what is the position of our fingers, what is the position of the right palm, left palm. It is nothing to do with that. It is Shambhavi Mudra is something to do or everything to do with the prana, the mind and the indriyas and the gaze, the drishti it is. And it says that then the flashes into the Shambhu itself. That is the Param Shambhavam it is. And it is beyond Shunya and Ashunya. Beyond Shunya, Ashunya again we should not confuse because it was already defined in the earlier shlokas. It is Samadhi, it is Unmani. Pariyaya Vachakaha or Pariyaya Pada, these are all the dimensions. Similarly, Shambhavi Mudra, what are the benefits out of it? Beautifully, the shlokas go on describing in details. The Khichari also has been given and defined in the 43 and the 44th shlokas. Many of the institutions and the yoga gurus and the yoga masters, yoga instructors and the teachers keep on emphasizing about this Shambhavi Mudra, Shambhava Mudra and other various types of mudras, about the external physical gestures, importance of external physical biological positions. But we should always remember these external physical positions of our body parts is secondary to the internal effects and the internal dimensions of the mudra. When it is referred as internal, means about the mind, buddhi, ahankara, chitta, and the thoughts, the sankalpas, then the subtle forces of the indriyas, the desires, and the various dimensions of the emotions. These are to be handled, and they are handled, they are focused, they are mastered. That is the Shambhavi Mudra. Maybe the external biological positions of the body parts may be helpful to it, but they are not the primary importance. They are the secondary importance. But in fact, if the effects of the Shambhavi Mudra as described earlier, when in the state of the Samadhi and the Unmani Shunya Ashunya level, in that position of the mind, prana, and the chitta, what would have been or what will be the convenient position of the body parts? If that relation has been established, is established, then that adopting that particular position physically, biologically, may be congenial, comfortable for the inner experiences. But again, we should remember that is not a guaranteed dimension. It's not a mandatory dimension. That's enough to understand about the Shambhavi Mudra. Then the Khichari Mudra also, Swatmarama Suri goes very details where he says that the Khichari is no doubt established in the body in which Maruta again, Vata, Prana, Nadis flow into the Sushumna Nadi. And this is the reality, he puts it beautifully. And the shloka is very wonderful. It says, Ida Pingalayor Madhye Shunyam Chaiva Anilam Graset Tishthate Khichari Mudra Tatra Satyam Punah Punah. See how he establishes? He says, Tishthate Khichari Mudra Tatra Satyam Punaha Punaha. This is truth, and this is correct. What is that? Ida Pingalayor Madhye Shunyam Chaiva Anilam Graset. In that middle portion, Anilam, it flows. So again, even in the Khichari Mudra, what is the position of the tongue, what is the length of the tongue, where it should be pressed, where it should be tightened, where it is to be loosened, what should be the position of the eyes, nose, throat, mouth. These are all again secondary dimensions. The primary is what will be happening, what is happening inside. That is an important dimension. And sufficing with this, there is another beautiful dimension. Swatmarama goes further. Beautiful shloka we find in the 56th shloka, talks about the importance of Samadhi. A beautiful shloka it is. There are a series of shlokas describing about the Samadhi, but this 56 is a core shloka, very important and most powerful shloka which talks about Samadhi. Antashunyo Bahishunyaha Shunyah Kumbha Iva Ambare Antapurno Bahipurnaha Purnaha Kumbha Iva Ranave. Antashunyo Bahishunyaha Shunyah Kumbha Iva Ambare Antapurno Bahipurnaha Purnaha Kumbha Iva Ranave. This is a reflection of the same mantra in the Mandukya Upanishad. Nanta pragyam na bahi pragyam no bhayata pragyam na prajnanagaram. And this particular shloka is almost a mirror reflection of it. Antashunyo bahishunyaha. Shunyaha kumbha means everywhere it is neither emptiness inside nor the emptiness outside, neither the fullness inside nor the fullness outside. It is everywhere, all pervading experience. That is Samadhi, he calls it. We should also remember what is Samadhi Abhidhiyate, which was told earlier. And that is not different. Those shlokas are not different from these shlokas. These are the value added and further clarified characteristics and deeper dimensions of the Samadhi. Sankalpa matra kalanaiva jagat samagram. Sankalpa matra kalanaiva manovilasaha. Sankalpa matram iti utsrujya nirvikalpam ashritya nishchaya apnuhi rama shantim. What a beautiful shloka it is. Sankalpa matraha, he calls it. Sankalpa matra jagat samagram. Sankalpa matra manovilasaha. Sankalpa matra nirvikalpaha. And that is how the beautiful sutra which tells into it and uses the word Rama, that is here it is Swatma Ramaha, certainly attains the Nirvikalpa. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi has been beautifully described in this, where the entire universal is a mental construction. There are a lot of reflections of this particular shloka actually speaks about the entire Sanatana Dharma, Advaita philosophy, what is spoken in the Upanishads, what is spoken in the Bhagavad Gita, what was spoken in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. This series of shlokas talks about, reflects, reminds, re-establishes and re-emphasizes those philosophical dimensions that the mind constructs the world, mind constructs the creation, and it is the mind which is responsible for the whole dimension. And beautiful sutra, a shloka in the 59th shloka. Karpuram anale yadvat saindhavam salile yatha tatha sandhiyamanam cha manastatve viliyate. Just like a camphor, karpur, does in the fire. What happens to karpur in fire? What happens to salt in water? Same thing happens to the mind when it merges in the Brahman. You use the beautiful word it is. sandhiyate cha manasa viliyate. And that is how the Jnayam sarvam pratitam cha jnanam cha manah ujjate. Jnanam jnayam samam nashtam nanyah pantha dvitiyakaha. All these shlokas describing up to the almost up to the 63rd shloka, they all discuss about the highest dimensions of Samadhi, which is not different from what we speak about the Vedanta philosophies, Advaita philosophies, Brahmasthiti, Brahmisthiti, and Advaita Sthiti, Parama Brahmasthiti, Anandasthiti. It's all different, same dimensions will come. And from the 64th shloka to the 77th shloka discusses about the Nadhanusandhanam. It is, and that is a very important dimension of the entire, the core of the Chaturtha Upadesha, which we shall see in our another session of the series. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.